Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Five. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about resilience, talent, and self-respect. This story takes place at the French Laundry, one of the most luxurious restaurants, where crystal glasses gleam under soft lights, reflecting conversations filled with wealth and privilege. The time is a late autumn evening in 2023 as a cool breeze gently weaves through the window panes. Our main character is DeAndre Brown, a 22-year-old black man whom the restaurant's elite customers see as nothing more than an invisible waiter. But behind that apron, he carries a dream of music. And now, let's begin the story. The French Laundry was bustling as always, filled with glamorous conversations, bursts of laughter, and the faint aroma of expensive wine lingering in the air. DeAndre Brown moved seamlessly through the dining room, ensuring everything was perfect. But tonight, there was a special guest, Emily Carter, a woman renowned in high society for her striking beauty and commanding presence. Emily walked in as if the entire room belonged to her. Dressed in a designer gown, she strode confidently to the VIP table that had been meticulously prepared for her. Her entourage was just as extravagant. Business moguls, designers, people who thrived on luxury and craved new entertainment. They weren't there just to dine. They were there to craft a memorable evening, and someone had to be at the center of their amusement. As DeAndre approached their table, Emily observed him with a slight smirk. Something flickered in her eyes. An idea. A game. "This waiter looks interesting," she murmured to her friends before suddenly asking aloud, "Hey, do you play music?" DeAndre froze for a fraction of a second, but quickly regained his composure. He had no idea why she was taking an interest in him, but something in his gut told him this wasn't just a casual question. It wasn't simple curiosity. It was the start of a challenge. DeAndre took a steady breath, tightening his grip on the tray in his hands. His heart pounded, but his face remained composed. Emily Carter's question wasn't a simple expression of curiosity. It was a test, a condescending challenge masked as casual amusement. "Do you play music?" The words hung in the air, and the people at her table chuckled softly, anticipating some unexpected entertainment. DeAndre swallowed dryly. He could lie, pretend he didn't know a thing, and continue his shift without disruption, but deep down, he knew the truth would come out eventually. "Yes, I play the piano," he answered, his voice calm but firm. The murmurs at the table grew louder, curious eyes now fixed on him. Emily tilted her head slightly, the smirk on her lips widening. "Well, isn't that interesting? There's a beautiful piano right over there. Why don't you show us what you can do?" The atmosphere around him tightened. DeAndre was no longer just a waiter. He had become the center of an impromptu spectacle, forced into a game he hadn't chosen to play. The waiting eyes, the soft laughter, the barely hidden amusement in their expressions. It was all too familiar. If he refused, he might lose his job. But if he agreed, would he be nothing more than their evening's entertainment, another story to laugh about over champagne? From a distance, the restaurant manager watched, but chose not to intervene. This was DeAndre's decision. He exhaled slowly and glanced at the piano in a corner of the room. He knew exactly what he had to do. The room, once filled with murmurs and quiet amusement, now stood still as DeAndre Brown let his fingers dance over the keys. He had placed the tray down, steadied his breath, and walked toward the grand piano. not as a reluctant performer, but as someone who refused to be controlled by the expectations of others. He could have declined. He could have walked away. But something deep within him, pride, defiance, or perhaps just the unshakable love for music, refused to let him be reduced to a joke. If this was a game, then he would be the one to set the rules. As he sat down, every eye in the restaurant turned toward him. The smirks, the condescending glances, the curiosity, and the skepticism all converged upon him. DeAndre ignored them. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, feeling the cool ivory beneath his fingertips, then pressed the first note. The music began. Not a simple tune, not a safe, forgettable melody, but a composition filled with depth and passion. Each note rose and fell with a purpose, carrying a story that only the truly listening could understand. The grand piano, polished and pristine, had never before sung with such raw, unfiltered emotion. Slowly, the laughter faded, the whispers quieted, conversations ceased. Emily Carter leaned back, her confident demeanor wavering for the first time that evening. She had expected a performance, something amusing, perhaps even awkward. Instead, she had been given something breathtaking. DeAndre's hands moved effortlessly, every motion deliberate, every crescendo a declaration. He was no longer a nameless waiter in a crowded restaurant. He was an artist. And when the last note resonated through the air, a heavy silence followed, pregnant with awe, with realization. Then, breaking through the stillness, the first sound emerged. Applause, scattered at first, then more, and soon the entire room was clapping. As the final note hung in the air, a strange silence settled over the room. Not a single word was spoken. Not a single mocking laugh followed. The very same patrons who had, moments ago, viewed DeAndre as nothing more than passing entertainment now sat motionless, caught in the wake of the music he had poured his soul into. Then a sound broke through the stillness. Applause. At first it was hesitant, scattered, but then it grew. It spread across the room, rippling through the crowd like a wave of awakening. Some guests even rose to their feet, stunned by what they had just witnessed. They had not seen a waiter playing the piano. They had seen a true artist. Emily Carter did not clap. She sat frozen, her gaze locked on DeAndre, her lips pressed together, as if trying to suppress an emotion she did not want to acknowledge. She had expected to witness his humiliation, a fleeting moment of amusement at his expense. But now the power had shifted. The game she had started had been taken from her hands. The silence around her table was deafening. Her friends, so lively before, now unsure of what to say. DeAndre inhaled deeply, rising from the piano bench. He didn't need to look at Emily to know that he had won. But his victory wasn't about her. He had not played to prove himself to her or to anyone in that room. He had played to remind himself of who he truly was. Without a word, DeAndre walked back toward the service station, returning to his duties. But inside, something had changed. The world might still see him as a waiter, but he knew better now. He was, and always had been, an artist. DeAndre sat in silence, gripping the letter tightly as he read it again, letting each word sink in. Was this a genuine attempt at redemption, or just Emily Carter's way of easing her own conscience? He couldn't be sure, but one thing was undeniable. This was an opportunity. For years, he had dreamed of dedicating his life to music, but reality had kept him grounded, tied to long shifts and late nights at the French Laundry. Now, suddenly, A door had been opened, a chance to walk through it, a chance to become the musician he had always known he was meant to be. Later that evening, as he polished glasses at the service station, he caught sight of Emily sitting at the same table as the night before. But this time she wasn't laughing, nor was she surrounded by an entourage. She sat alone, slowly swirling the wine in her glass, lost in thought. Summoning his courage, DeAndre folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket. He took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and walked toward her table. Emily looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. "Miss Carter," he said, voice steady but measured, "why are you doing this?" She studied him for a moment before placing her glass down. "Because I was wrong," she admitted, "and because you deserve more than this place." DeAndre nodded slowly, still unsure of her motives, but understanding that this wasn't just about her. It was about him, about what he wanted for his future. For the first time, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he was allowed to accept help without losing his pride. "I'll think about it," he said at last. Emily gave a small nod, as if she had expected that answer. And for the first time in a long while, DeAndre Brown felt like he was finally in control of his own story. The next morning, as the sun cast a golden hue over the city, DeAndre found himself standing outside the French Laundry, letter in hand. The weight of his decision sat heavy on his chest, but deep down he already knew what he wanted. He had spent years doubting whether he would ever get a real chance to chase his dream. Now it was staring him right in the face. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside and asked to speak with Emily Carter. She was already there, seated at her usual table, sipping a cappuccino with the same effortless elegance she carried in everything she did. When she saw him approach, she raised an eyebrow, curious. "I take it you made a decision," she said, setting her cup down. DeAndre nodded and carefully placed the letter on the table between them. "I'll accept," he said, "but not as charity." Emily smirked slightly. "I never expected you to." DeAndre met her gaze, making sure she understood. "I'll work for it. I'll pay it back in whatever way I can. I don't want any handouts." Something in her expression shifted, perhaps a trace of respect. She reached for the letter and tucked it back into her purse. "I wouldn't have it any other way." For the first time, DeAndre felt a sense of relief, like he had taken control of his own fate. This wasn't about Emily Carter anymore. It wasn't about pride or proving a point. This was about him stepping into the life he was meant to live. And so, with nothing but his passion and determination, DeAndre Brown took his first step toward the future he had always dreamed of. One of the professors leaned forward, fingers steepled, eyes locked onto DeAndre as if studying every note he had just played. Another exchanged a glance with her colleague, silent conversation passing between them. The air was thick with expectation. Then the head of the panel, a man with silver-streaked hair and a lifetime of music behind him, finally spoke. "That," he said slowly, "was not just a performance. That was a statement." DeAndre swallowed, his heartbeat still sinking with the last vibrations of the piano strings. The professor continued, "You didn't just play the notes, you told a story, and that is what makes a true musician." DeAndre didn't move, waiting for the final verdict. The woman in the middle of the panel smiled, setting her pen down. "Congratulations, Mr. Brown. Welcome to the New York Academy of Music." The words settled over DeAndre like a wave of relief, like the closing of one chapter and the thrilling unknown beginning of another. He had done it not by proving something to anyone else, but by proving it to himself. As he stepped out of the audition room into the crisp autumn air of New York, DeAndre knew this was only the beginning. His journey as a musician, as an artist, was just starting, but this time he wasn't playing for survival. He was playing for his future. As DeAndre stepped out of the French Laundry for the last time, he took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his old life slowly lift off his shoulders. The city hummed around him, but inside there was a stillness, a certainty that he was walking toward something greater. The acceptance letter in his pocket wasn't just an opportunity. It was proof that all the late nights practicing, all the moments of doubt, and every time he refused to let the world define him, had led him here. He glanced down at the small envelope Emily Carter had given him. Her words echoed in his mind. This is not charity, it's an investment. For a brief second, he considered the irony of it all. How someone who once saw him as a novelty now believed in him enough to invest in his future. But DeAndre knew this truth. No amount of money, no endorsement, no validation from the wealthy elite could ever outweigh the belief he had in himself. He tucked the envelope away and started walking, his steps steady, his heart light. This wasn't the end of his story. It was just the beginning, and for the first time, DeAndre Brown wasn't just playing music. He was composing his own destiny. As DeAndre stepped onto the bus bound for New York, he held the acceptance letter tightly in his hand, as if anchoring himself to the reality of this moment. Through the window, he watched the French Laundry fade into the distance, along with the chapter of his life he was leaving behind. But this wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, long nights of practice, moments of doubt. The weight of expectation would press down on him. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. He had fought too hard to let fear win now. He was no longer just a waiter with an unfinished dream. He was an artist, and soon the world would know the name DeAndre Brown.